All right, so this video I'm going to go over like one of my favorite things that I stumbled upon. So anybody who's not familiar with Haas delays, they're basically a delay that's very, very quick and just a single reflection or a single repeat of a sound, and usually within like 15 to 30 milliseconds at the most. So it's pretty imperceptible as an actual delay, but it gives the impression of sound bouncing off of surfaces in a room, and that makes it feel more live, more three-dimensional. This is great for Ableton. Before I say that, let me say what I'm going to show you is a little bit of a twist on the traditional way to do a Haas delay, and this is the part that I stumbled on, is using filtering along with the delay to get an even more realistic sound and to play with stereo image. So it doesn't take long to set up, but I'm going to walk through what I got here real quick. So in Ableton, as I was starting to say, a lot of the drum sounds are kind of flat because you're usually only using a single sample for like a snare drum, a hi-hat, whatever, whereas some of the more expensive, like library-driven drum sets will have multiple different ones, and you can have rim shots and stuff that just come in as the, the velocity of the MIDI note is higher. So in order to liven up Ableton drums, a lot of times I use this trick on all drums and even guitars and everything if I just need to thicken up the sound some. So anyway, but it's particularly useful in Ableton is what I'm saying. So what I've got here is two tracks. One is going to be completely dry, and I've got them cross-faded so that we'll be able to switch between them. I haven't put any of the effects on the affected track yet. We'll do that in the video. But it's just this simple beat that I made with the Altered Kit 3 in Ableton. So it doesn't sound bad, right? All right, well, let's have some fun with it real quick. All right, I'm going to pull the crossfader over to the other side. We're going to extend these out, and we're looking for the snare. So actually, I'm going to hit play again, and we'll just make sure. See, we wanted this snare. Okay, so we'll start with the snare. So I'm going to stop the audio. All right, and then what we're going to do, we're going to search for just the regular delay effect, which I actually have in my favorites here, so I'll just grab that. All right, and we're going to drop it on this guy. And so now we've got the simpler instrument here, and then we've got the delay with an EQ8 that I guess was part of the way the set was. So if I play it right now, you're going to have a whole bunch of echoes on the snare. Okay, that's not what we're going for. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to turn off sync. We're going to take the time all the way down. I usually will start somewhere around like 9, 10, 11 milliseconds. We're going to go from dry, wet, 50 to all the way wet. We're going to take the feedback down to 0. Okay? Now, this is the critical part. If I play this right now, we get doubles. Okay, but the problem is they're not stereo. It's not going to sound any better, really. So what we do is we right-click right here, and we're going to turn this into an effects rack, I guess would be the way to say it, by hitting group right there. Okay, and now it's in a rack. We're going to open up the different chains by hitting this bottom button, and then we're going to pull this guy all the way over to the left. And we're going to right-click and say create chain. And we're going to go all the way to the right. All right. I should mention this isn't the only way you can do this in Ableton, but I like it because it's really flexible. And it only takes 30 seconds once you've done it a couple times, if that even. You can do it very quickly. All right, so we've got a dry side to the right, and we've got the delayed side to the left. All right, I'm going to turn off the filter in the delay, and we'll just play. You can already hear the snare has got this width to it that it didn't have before. And you can play with that by how much you delay it. Once you go past about 30, people start to hear it as distinct. And it depends on the instrument and what the attack is like, but roughly around 30 is where people are going to start hearing distinct echoes instead of perceiving it as like a single snare hit. So for this one, I think I like it maybe around like 17 to 19. Let's do 17. Sounding a lot better, but this is the next step. And like I said, I totally just randomly actually found this in Pro Tools, dinking around, and I'm not a Pro Tools fan, but I guess that was one thing that was good that I got out of it, was with their similar type of delay, is to mess with the filters. So when I turn on the filter, I'm going to leave it wide open, and everything still just sounds nice and stereo, but centered in the image. Now, with the delay being panned to the left, when I start to do this and bring the filter in, you hear that it pushes the image of the snare drum over to the right some. Okay, now this is way more than I would normally do. I usually make it really subtle, and a lot of times I'll just take off the top end. So right there, now to me, the snare sounds realistically like it's in a audience perspective, kind of just slight to the right of center. And I think by using the filter, it does a better job of approximating what sound actually does in a room, where it's not going to reflect equally off the surfaces. It's going to have, different materials and things, and so it's a little more complex. It just sounds more natural to me. If you want to do a Haas delay, to do it with a filter on there. And then, like I said, I leave the main track centered, and I just push stuff around with the filter. And that way, I find it just usually ends up sounding a lot better. So let's do another thing. I'm going to demo something else with the hi-hat here. So that's this guy, close hi-hat. We can add it to the open as well. But so the easy way to do this, if you're not going to do the filtering, is to search for a line delay, which is a very simple delay that just has a left and a right, and you can push one back, very similar to what we were doing without the filter. It's basically the same thing as what we're doing without the filter. So you get a single echo pushed back. Right now it's 9.43 milliseconds on the hi-hat. That actually sounds really good. All right. It does sound a little artificial to my ear just because of not having the filtering. It sounds too perfect. So if I was I'm gonna repeat the process, but we'll go fast this time. So I'm gonna go delay. I'm gonna turn this one off. I'm gonna turn off sync. We'll go to the same timing, 9.4-ish. There we go. Let's turn the feedback down. Dry wet to 100. Right click, group, open up the chains, pull this guy to the left, or let's put him to the right this time. Doesn't really matter, honestly. Like you can play around with it however you want. Actually, honestly, we probably want to keep it to the left if we're going to keep a representative audience perspective of a drum set, where the hi-hat's even just a little bit left of the snare drum typically. So now we can go here and we can again play with the filter. All right, so now it's sitting just a little bit right of the snare drum, maybe a little bit too much. Actually, I like it right there. Okay, and I can literally like close this, and I can drag this, hit control, then drag it up onto my open hi-hat. All right, now it's on both of them, so the hi-hat has the same effect. The other option is the racks also have sends that you can, like say you wanted a right Haas, left Haas, whatever, so that you could put stuff on, which is going to put them in the same location stereo image wise, so not ideal a lot of the time. But if they're the same instrument, it works. Like these two hi-hat sounds, where you just have basically one rack with the effects, and both sounds are going through it. I'm sure we'll get into that more in class, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. But yeah, I mean, okay, so now let's do the A-B comparison. All right, so let's stop it. Pull it back over to our dry beat. And this is just the hi-hat and the snare. You can do this with as much stuff as you want. I typically don't mess with the bass drum because with bass drum, in a lot of genres, it sounds nice anchoring everything from the center, but that's not a universal rule. It just is a typical thing I find. All right, so here it is, dry. So it doesn't sound bad. That sounds a lot better to me. It's got a lot more three-dimensional feel. It'll hold somebody's interest a lot longer, I think, before they get tired of the sound. And that's really the main point when you're doing a lot of electronic beats and things, is you want stuff that isn't going to wear on people. So I think that's all I got for this one. If anybody has any questions, feel free to hit me up. Peace.